My sister did not raise her voice when she called me unstable. Dana sat perfectly straight in the witness chair, wearing a cream-colored jacket and the small silver cross she always wore to church fundraisers. She folded her hands in her lap and looked toward the probate judge as though she were sharing a painful family secret rather than trying to take my father's house away from me. My sister has struggled emotionally for years, she said. Our father became frightened of what she might do if he disagreed with her. My attorney's pen stopped moving. Across the courtroom, Dana's lawyer placed a printed copy of one of my private text messages onto the evidence table. I had sent it to Dana 3 years earlier during a panic attack. I can't breathe. Please call me. That sentence was now being used to argue that I had manipulated our father, pressured him into changing his will, and was mentally unfit to serve as executor of his estate. Then Judge Ramirez turned toward my father's estate attorney. "Mr. Hale," she said, "is this the envelope your client instructed you to preserve?" The attorney lifted a faded white envelope from his file. My father's handwriting crossed the front. "To be opened only if one of my daughters challenges my final wishes." The judge examined the seal, opened the envelope, and unfolded the letter inside. "Before I tell you what my father wrote, ask yourself how much private pain a family should be allowed to weaponize in public. 6 months earlier, I had believed Dana and I could settle everything without lawyers. That belief was not generosity. It was a habit. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 54 when my father died, and I had spent most of my adult life avoiding confrontations that I knew would eventually find me anyway. I worked as a transportation coordinator for a public school district outside Dayton, Ohio. My job involved bus routes, driver schedules, weather delays, parent complaints, and the occasional missing backpack that somehow became a district emergency. I was good at staying calm when other people were panicking. I was much less talented at protecting myself when the person creating the crisis was someone I loved. My younger sister, Dana Mercer, had always been better at being seen. She was 5 years younger than I was, attractive in a polished, approachable way, and successful enough as a real estate agent that people assumed she understood every financial decision better than anyone else in the room. She organized meal trains when someone at church had surgery. She remembered birthdays. She sent expensive flower arrangements to funerals and posted photographs of them online with messages about family, faith, and showing up for people. Dana did show up. She simply had a gift for arriving after the hardest work had been done. Our father, Walter Bennett, had repaired appliances for 37 years. He could listen to a washing machine for 20 seconds and tell you whether the belt was loose or the motor was dying. He distrusted anything that required a password and kept receipts long after the ink had faded. After our mother died, he lived alone in the small brick house where Dana and I had grown up. The house was not grand. It had 3 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a basement that smelled faintly of motor oil because Dad kept his tools down there. The backyard fence leaned toward the alley, and the bathroom tiles were the same pale green they had been when I was 10. But the mortgage had been paid off for years, and by the time Dad died, the house was worth a little over $300,000. That value changed the way Dana remembered our family. 7 years before his death, Dad suffered a mild stroke. He recovered most of his speech and movement, but he stopped driving at night and became anxious about handling paperwork. I began visiting every Tuesday and Saturday. I sorted his mail, drove him to appointments, filled his pill organizer, and cooked enough food to leave several labeled containers in his freezer. Dana visited too, though less predictably. She would arrive with bakery muffins, take Dad to lunch, and post a photograph captioned, "Daddy-Daughter Day with my favorite man." I resented those posts more than I admitted. While Dana was taking photographs, I was usually in the background checking whether Dad had paid the gas bill twice or forgotten to refill his blood pressure medication. Still, I protected her. When Dad asked why Dana had missed his cardiology appointment, I said she had a closing. When she borrowed money from him, I called it temporary. When she promised to repay him and did not, I told myself it was none of my business. That was my central mistake. I confused keeping the peace with being kind. The first loan was $12,000 to help Dana renovate a rental property she planned to resell. The second was $8,000 to cover what she described as a delayed commission. Later there was money for her daughter's tuition, repairs to her SUV, and a tax bill she said had surprised her. Dad rarely complained directly. He would sit at the kitchen table with his checkbook open and ask, "Do you think Dana's business is doing all right?" I always answered carefully, "She has good months and slow months." What I should have said was that Dana had begun treating his savings as an emergency account she did not need permission to use. Instead, I reassured him. Part of me believed I was protecting Dana from his disappointment. Another part was afraid that if I named the pattern, I would become responsible for stopping it. The last time Dad gave her money, he called me afterward. She said she'd lose her office if I didn't help. He told me how much. There was a pause. 1,500? 15,000. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Dad, did you talk to anyone before giving her that? She's my daughter, so am I. The words came out more sharply than I intended. He became quiet. I apologized, which was another habit of mine. I often apologized when I was the first person in the room to say something true. A week later, I went to his house and found a yellow legal pad beside his checkbook. Dad had begun listing every amount he had given Dana. Dates, check numbers, short descriptions, roof project, college, office rent, taxes. At the bottom, he had added the numbers twice. The total was $63,400. Why are you keeping this? I asked, so I don't forget. Are you asking her to repay you? He looked toward the kitchen window. I'm deciding what fair means. That sentence unsettled me, but I did not ask what he intended to do. I told myself his estate was his private business. I also knew that any conversation about inheritance would force Dana and me to acknowledge the loans, and I was still trying to preserve a version of our family in which no one had taken advantage of anyone. Dad's health declined gradually. He remained mentally sharp most days, but he sometimes repeated questions. His primary care doctor described it as mild cognitive impairment and advised us to watch for changes. Dana seized on that phrase immediately. She began attending more appointments. She offered to take over his bills. She suggested adding her name to his checking account in case of an emergency. Dad refused. He did not make a scene. He simply said, "Claire already helps me with that." Dana called me from her car afterward. "You've made him dependent on you. I organize his mail. That isn't dependency. You're there constantly, because someone needs to be. And there it is," she said, the martyr routine. That accusation worked on me because it contained a small amount of truth. I was resentful. I did want recognition. I had spent years doing practical work and pretending I needed nothing in return. Sometimes I wanted Dad to notice. Sometimes I wanted Dana to admit that her public version of herself was incomplete. But resentment did not mean I had controlled him. It meant I was tired. In October, Dad fell in the bathroom and fractured his wrist. He spent 3 days in the hospital and 2 weeks in a rehabilitation facility. During that time, Dana told several relatives that I had delayed getting him medical help. What actually happened was that Dad fell at 4 in the morning, pressed his emergency alert button, and was taken to the hospital before either of us knew. Dana knew this. The alert company's record showed it. Still, she said the words. "I've been concerned about Claire's judgment for a while." My cousin Marlene repeated the comment to me during a phone call. "She's just worried," Marlene said. "You have been under a lot of stress." That was when I understood how Dana's manipulation worked. She rarely told a complete lie. She arranged true facts in a dishonest order. Yes, I had been under stress. Yes, I'd experienced panic attacks. Yes, I had taken 6 weeks of medical leave from work 3 years earlier. What Dana left out was why. My marriage of 28 years had ended suddenly. My former husband had moved out while I was at work and left a note on the kitchen counter. 2 months later, our mother's cancer returned. I spent the next year moving between my job, my mother's treatments, and a home that no longer felt like mine. One afternoon in a grocery store, my chest tightened. My hands went numb. I believed I was having a heart attack. It was a panic attack. I entered therapy voluntarily, took medication for 8 months, and learned how to recognize what was happening before fear controlled my body. I was not ashamed of getting help, but I had made the mistake of trusting Dana with the details. During my worst night, I had sent her the text she later displayed in court. "I can't breathe. Please call me," she called. She stayed on the phone until I calmed down. For years, I remembered that as proof that beneath all our differences, my sister would be there when I truly needed her. I did not know she had saved the screenshot. After Dad left rehabilitation, he asked to meet privately with an estate attorney named Martin Hale. I knew Mr. Hale by reputation. He had handled our mother's simple estate, but I had not spoken to him in years. Dad asked me to drive him to the appointment. When we arrived, I helped him through the front door and sat in the waiting room. Mr. Hale came out after a few minutes. "Walter would like to meet with me alone." "That's fine." The receptionist later recorded the appointment in her calendar as 90 minutes. I spent most of that time completing bus route changes on my laptop and drinking weak coffee from a paper cup. When Dad came out, he looked exhausted but satisfied. "What did you change?" I asked in the car. "My affairs." "That sounds ominous." "It's supposed to." I laughed, but he did not. Then he said, "I made it fair." I asked whether Dana knew. "No, are you going to tell her?" "No, that answer worried me. Dad's secrets become fights after people die." He turned toward the passenger window. "Some fights happen because people don't like the answer, not because the answer was hidden." I should have pushed him harder. I should have encouraged a family meeting while he was alive and able to explain himself. Instead, I let the subject drop. That was my second major mistake. Silence did not prevent the conflict. It merely postponed it until Dad could no longer speak for himself. Over the next 18 months, Dad's physical health worsened, but his mind remained largely consistent. He knew his doctors, his medications, the names of all 9 of his grandchildren, and exactly how much the property taxes had increased. He also knew when he was having a bad day. On those days, he would hand me the mail and say, "Not today." Dana visited more often during the final 6 months. At first I was grateful. She brought groceries and sat with him while I worked. She took him for haircuts. She replaced the worn curtains in the living room and arranged for a photographer from her real estate office to take what she called family photographs. I did not understand the importance of that photographer until later. 3 months before Dad died, he called me during my lunch break. "Is the house for sale?" I thought he was confused. "No. Why would you ask that?" Dana had a man measuring the downstairs. I called her immediately. She said the man was a contractor estimating accessibility improvements. Dad insisted the man had discussed listing angles and natural light. Dana laughed. "Claire, he probably misunderstood. You know how he gets when he's tired." I accepted that explanation because I wanted it to be true. After Dad died, I found a draft property description on Dana's laptop only because she accidentally attached it to an email she sent the estate attorney. 3-bedroom brick home in established neighborhood. Estate sale. Excellent renovation potential. The document had been created 11 weeks before Dad's death. He died on a rainy Monday morning in March. I was with him at the hospital. Dana arrived 20 minutes after the nurse had covered him with a white blanket. For once, there were no cameras, no relatives, and no audience. Dana stood beside the bed and touched his hand. "I wasn't here," she whispered. There was no performance in her voice. I put my arm around her, and she leaned against me. Grief can make you believe a broken relationship has healed simply because 2 people are crying in the same room. For the first week, we worked together. We chose the funeral home, selected photographs, and divided the phone calls. Dana arranged flowers. I located Dad's military discharge papers in the cemetery documents. At the funeral, Dana gave a beautiful speech about his steadiness, humor, and belief in family. She mentioned the Saturday lunches they had shared. She did not mention the loans. I did not either. 10 days after the funeral, Mr. Hale invited us to his office for the reading of Dad's will. Formal will readings are mostly something people see in movies, but Mr. Hale believed it would be easier to explain the documents to us together. The will was straightforward. Dad left his personal belongings to both of us by agreement. He left his investment account, valued at approximately $148,000 at the time the will was signed, to Dana. He left the house to me. The remaining cash in his checking and savings accounts would pay estate expenses, with anything left divided equally. Dana did not react immediately. She stared at Mr. Hale. "What did you say?" He repeated the distribution. "That cannot be right. It is your father's signed will. The house is worth twice the investment account." Mr. Hale adjusted his glasses. "Your father discussed prior financial gifts when making that decision." Dana turned toward me. "What prior gifts?" I looked down at my hands. She knew exactly what he meant. Mr. Hale explained that Dad had considered the money he had given her over several years. The legal pad itself was not incorporated into the will, but Dad had provided copies of checks and account statements. Dana's expression changed, not into guilt, into calculation. "You knew about this," she said to me. "I knew he was keeping records. You helped him. No, you drove him here. He asked me for a ride. You sat outside while he disinherited me." "You were not disinherited. I received less," Mr. Hale intervened. "Your father's estate plan does not require either daughter to agree with his reasoning." Dana stood. "My father had cognitive impairment. Claire controlled his appointments, his bills, his food, and his transportation. She isolated him." I felt something cold move through me. "That isn't true." "She was having panic attacks," Dana continued. "She was on medication. He worried about her." Mr. Hale's face became still. "Dana, I met with your father alone. I also arranged an independent capacity evaluation before executing the documents." She looked at him. "You had him evaluated?" "At his request." Dana picked up her purse. This is not over. She walked out without taking a copy of the will. I remained in the chair. Mr. Hale gave me a glass of water. Did you know she would react like this? I asked. He considered the question before answering. Your father believed there was a possibility of a challenge. Why didn't he tell me? He did not want you involved in planning the response. That was the first time I heard about the sealed letter. Mr. Hale told me Dad had written it in his own hand, then reviewed it with him. The letter had been signed and dated in front of 2 witnesses. It was not a substitute for the will, and it did not change the legal distribution. It was a statement explaining Dad's decisions. He had instructed Mr. Hale to preserve it unopened unless Dana or I formally challenged his estate plan or accused the other daughter of coercion. Have you read it? I asked. No. You helped him prepare it. I discussed the subjects he wanted to address. The final letter was placed in the envelope by your father. Can I see it? Not unless the condition he described occurs. I remember hoping it never would. 3 weeks later, Dana filed a petition contesting the will. She alleged that Dad lacked sufficient mental capacity when he signed it, and that I had exercised undue influence over him. She also asked the probate court to appoint a neutral administrator rather than allowing me to serve as executor. Her petition described me as emotionally volatile, financially distressed, and excessively dependent on Dad. The financially distressed part came from my divorce. After selling the house I had shared with my former husband, I had moved into a small townhouse and used much of my share to pay off debt and help my adult daughter after a difficult pregnancy. I was not wealthy, but I paid my bills and had a stable job. Dana presented my ordinary financial limitations as motive. She also claimed I had moved Dad's belongings into my home before his death. That was technically true. Dad had given me our mother's cedar chest and a set of hand tools he wanted my son to have. I had photographs of him helping us load the items, but the petition simply described removal of valuable property. The language was careful enough to sound alarming. My first instinct was to call Dana and reason with her. Mr. Hale advised against it. I ignored him. Dana answered on the 3rd ring. How could you file this? How could you let Dad sign that will? I did not know what was in it. You expect me to believe that? Yes. Claire, you controlled everything. I took care of him. You made yourself necessary. The sentence hit me because it echoed a fear I already carried. Had I stepped in too often? Had Dad relied on me because I did not leave room for anyone else? Then Dana said, you were not well. Everyone knew it. Dad knew it. My doubt turned into anger. My panic attacks had nothing to do with him. You don't remember how you sounded. I remember calling you for help. And I helped you. Yes. Her voice softened. That is what I am trying to do now. I almost laughed. You are trying to take Dad's house. I'm trying to prevent a vulnerable person from benefiting from decisions she pressured him to make. There was no point continuing. Before I ended the call, I asked one question. Did you know he was keeping track of the money you borrowed? Silence. Then she said, parents help their children. They do. You received help too. That was true. Dad had paid $5,000 toward my daughter's medical bills after her baby was born prematurely. He had also replaced my furnace after my divorce. The difference was that I had not hidden those gifts, and together they were nowhere near what Dana had received. Still, her answer reminded me why she believed she was entitled to challenge the will. In her mind, Dad's help had not been a loan or an advance. It had been evidence of love. Any accounting of it felt like rejection. The court appointed a temporary neutral administrator while the contest was pending. That decision was not a ruling against me, but it felt like one. I could not access Dad's accounts to pay expenses. I could not begin transferring the house. I needed approval before removing anything from the property. Dana told relatives the judge had blocked Claire from controlling the estate. The family group chat became quiet. 2 cousins stopped, returning my calls. My aunt sent me a message saying, your father would not want his daughters fighting over money. I wanted to respond that only one of us had filed a lawsuit. Instead, I deleted 3 drafts and said nothing. Silence had become my reflex, even when it was actively helping Dana. My attorney, Rebecca Shaw, changed that. Rebecca was a probate litigator in her early 60s, with a direct manner and no interest in family mythology. She reviewed Dana's petition, the will, Dad's medical records, and the documents Mr. Hale had preserved. Then she looked at me across her desk. What are you afraid people will think if you defend yourself? That I cared for him because I wanted the house. Did you? No. Then stop behaving as though answering an accusation makes you guilty of it. I told her about my therapy and panic attacks. She did not flinch. Did you ever lose the ability to manage your affairs? No. Were you hospitalized involuntarily? No. Did any licensed professional declare you unable to work, make decisions, or care for another adult? Know then your sister is using treatment as a character argument. That may influence relatives. It should not determine a probate case. Rebecca warned me that the case would still be difficult. Dad's mild cognitive impairment gave Dana something real to point toward. My frequent involvement in his daily life gave her a possible opportunity for influence. The unequal distribution created a possible motive. We needed to show not only that Dad understood his decisions, but that those decisions came from him. The independent capacity evaluation helped. A geriatric psychiatrist named Dr. Levin had met with Dad 4 days before the will was signed. Her report stated that he understood the nature of his property, recognized Dana and me as his heirs, and could explain the practical effect of leaving the house to me and the investment account to Dana. But the report also noted mild short-term memory deficits. Dana's lawyer focused on that sentence. Our first setback came when Dad's primary care doctor was deposed. I had assumed he would support us. He had known Dad for 15 years. Instead, he said he could not offer an opinion about Dad's legal capacity on the exact date of the will. He confirmed the mild cognitive impairment diagnosis and admitted Dad had occasionally become confused about appointment dates. Dana's lawyer summarized the testimony to the family as though the doctor had declared Dad incompetent. That was not what he said, but the damage was immediate. My aunt called me. "Claire, if your father was confused, maybe the fairest thing is to sell the house and split everything." The will did not say that. Sometimes legal papers do not reflect someone's heart. I nearly answered that Dana had spent years treating Dad's checkbook as an expression of his heart. Instead, "He was allowed to make a decision you would not have made." My aunt sighed. "You sound angry. I am angry." That admission felt like a small act of freedom. Rebecca obtained Dad's bank records. The checks to Dana matched almost every entry on his yellow legal pad. Some had written notes in the memo line: office, tuition, property tax. But 2 checks were missing from the records we initially received because they came from an older account Dad had closed. Without those checks, Dana's total was lower than the amount Dad had used when planning the estate. Her lawyer argued that the ledger was unreliable. For several days, I feared the missing records would make Dad appear mistaken. Then I remembered a cardboard file box in the basement. Dad kept old tax returns and canceled checks longer than anyone needed to. The temporary administrator allowed Rebecca and me to inspect the box in the presence of an estate representative. Inside were bank statements, appliance warranties, my mother's recipe cards, and a folder labeled Dana, Hose. The folder contained photocopies of the missing checks. It also contained a 1-page note in Dad's handwriting. Dana says these are loans when she asks, gifts when I ask about repayment. The note hurt more than the amount. It proved Dad had understood the pattern I kept trying to soften, but the folder did not solve the case by itself. Dana admitted receiving the money. She claimed Dad had always intended it as gifts and had only begun describing the payments as advances after I influenced him. Her explanation was plausible enough that some relatives accepted it. Then we discovered the draft property listing. Dana sent Mr. Hale an email requesting information about insurance on the house. She accidentally attached 2 files. One was a scanned policy. The other was a real estate listing draft created before Dad's death. Mr. Hale forwarded the email to the temporary administrator, who provided it to both sides. The metadata showed that Dana had created the document 11 weeks before Dad died. It described the property as an estate sale and included photographs taken by the man she had called an accessibility contractor. When Rebecca questioned her, Dana said she had been helping Dad understand the house's market value. "Did Walter ask you to prepare a listing?" Rebecca asked during the deposition. "He discussed downsizing. Where did he intend to move?" "We had not decided." "Did he sign a listing agreement?" "No." "Did you tell Claire you were preparing the property for sale?" "No, because Claire became emotional whenever the house was discussed." That was another partial truth. I had become emotional once, months earlier, when Dad mentioned the possibility of moving into assisted living. I cried in my car afterward. Dana had seen me. She transformed that grief into evidence that I could not tolerate the sale of the house. The photographer's invoice helped clarify what happened. It was billed to Dana's real estate office, not to Dad. The description read, "Pre-listing estate property package." The invoice did not prove she had committed fraud. It proved she had been planning for control of the house before Dad died. The deeper motive emerged slowly. Dana's real estate career was not as successful as it appeared. Her sales had fallen. She owed money on the rental property Dad had helped her renovate. and a business line of credit had gone into default. Publicly, she was still posting photographs from closings and charity events. Privately, she needed cash. A quick sale of Dad's house, followed by an equal division of the estate, would give her enough to resolve most of her debt. Rebecca found the business filings through public records, but she cautioned me not to overstate them. Debt gives her motive, she said. It does not prove your father lacked capacity or that she lied about you. That distinction mattered. I had spent months wanting one document to establish that Dana was simply bad and I was simply right. Real life rarely offers evidence that clean. Dana had helped me during my panic attack. She had loved Dad. She had also borrowed too much money, hidden the depth of her financial trouble, and convinced herself that correcting Dad's will was the same as correcting an injustice. People can care about you and still harm you when your existence interferes with the story they need to believe. As the hearing approached, Dana intensified the emotional attack. Her attorney requested records related to my medical leave, arguing that they were relevant to my ability to exert pressure and manage the estate. Rebecca objected to the scope. The judge limited what could be introduced. Dana could not simply open my entire therapy history to public inspection. However, the text message I had sent her could be discussed because I had voluntarily sent it, and Dana claimed it showed a pattern of emotional dependence. I wanted Rebecca to fight its admission more aggressively. She said, "We can object, but hiding from the message may give it more power. I sound terrified in it. You were terrified. What if the judge thinks that means Dana is right? Then we explain the difference between experiencing panic and lacking judgment." I hated how reasonable she sounded. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. At 2 a.m, I stood in my kitchen with a glass of water, feeling the old tightness begin in my chest. For a few seconds, I was not 54. I was back in the grocery store, gripping a cart while strangers passed me, and my body insisted I was dying. This time, I recognized it. I placed both feet on the floor. I slowed my breathing. I named 5 objects I could see: the clock, the blue dish towel, the fruit bowl, the dent in the refrigerator door, my father's old coffee mug. The panic passed, not instantly, not dramatically. It loosened one small degree at a time. That morning, I wore a navy dress and carried no object for luck. I had spent years believing strength meant never appearing afraid. I was beginning to understand that strength could also mean appearing exactly as I was, and refusing to let someone else define what my fear meant. The probate courtroom was smaller than I expected. There was no jury, no dramatic gallery, just the judge, court staff, lawyers, witnesses, Dana, me, and a few relatives seated behind us. Dana testified first. Her lawyer asked about Dad's decline, my role in his care, and the unequal will. Dana described me as loving but overwhelmed. That word was deliberate. It allowed her to sound compassionate while discrediting me. She said Dad had complained that I became upset when he talked about selling the house. She said I controlled his transportation. She said he worried I would have nowhere stable to live if I did not inherit the property. Then her lawyer asked, "Did you have concerns about your sister's emotional health?" Dana lowered her eyes. "Yes." "What were those concerns?" "She had periods when she could not regulate herself. She called me unable to breathe. She said she could not think clearly. Our father knew about it." The lawyer handed her the printed message. Dana identified it. My private fear became a courtroom exhibit. Then she said the sentence I will remember for the rest of my life. "My sister is unstable, and our father was vulnerable to her instability. Not cruel, not dramatic, almost sorrowful." Rebecca waited until cross-examination. "Your sister sent that message 3 years before the will was signed, correct?" "Yes." "During the year her marriage ended and your mother was dying?" "Yes." "Did she seek medical treatment?" "Yes." "Did she continue working after her leave?" "Yes." "Did you ever observe her mishandle your father's medication? No, miss one of his medical appointments?" "Not that I know of." "Failed to pay a bill she was responsible for organizing?" "No." "Did Walter ever tell you he feared Claire?" Dana paused. "He said she became emotional. That was not my question." "He worried about her. Did he say he feared her?" "Not in those exact words." Rebecca picked up the property listing draft. 11 weeks before your father died, you prepared to advertise his home as an estate sale, correct?" "It was a valuation exercise." "Why did the document include showing instructions?" Dana looked toward her lawyer. "It was a template." "Why did you tell Claire the photographer was an accessibility contractor?" "I did not want to upset her." That answer was revealing, though not in the way Dana intended. She had positioned herself as the person entitled to make decisions because I might react emotionally to learning about them. By afternoon, both sides had presented most of their evidence. Dr. Levin testified about Dad's capacity evaluation. Mr. Hale described meeting with Dad alone. His receptionist confirmed that I remained in the waiting room and had no access to the documents. The bank records and ledger were admitted. Dana's attorney emphasized the missing original checks, Dad's cognitive diagnosis, and my caregiving role. He argued that none of those facts independently proved undue influence, but that together they created a suspicious pattern. For the first time, I understood why Rebecca had warned me not to expect a simple victory. Dana's case was not absurd. It was built from real pieces of our lives. She simply arranged them to erase Dad's agency. Near the end of the hearing, Rebecca called Mr. Hale back to the witness stand. He brought the sealed envelope. Dana's lawyer objected before he could explain it. The judge asked for the foundation. Mr. Hale testified that Dad had written the letter after reviewing his estate plan. 2 members of the firm had witnessed him sign across the sealed flap. The envelope had remained in the firm's secure records room. Dad's written instruction permitted disclosure if either daughter challenged the will or alleged coercion. Dana's petition had triggered that condition. The judge examined the envelope. "This letter will not replace the evidence already presented," she said. "I will consider it only for the limited purpose of evaluating the decedent's expressed intentions and state of mind." Then she opened it. The sound of tearing paper was small. Still, everyone in the room seemed to stop breathing. Judge Ramirez read silently at first. Her expression did not change. After a moment, she asked the lawyers to approach. They reviewed the letter, and each received a copy. Dana stared toward her attorney. I looked at my father's handwriting from several feet away and felt an ache rise in my throat. The judge returned to the bench. "Miss Shaw, you may address the relevant portions," Rebecca asked Mr. Hale to read the first paragraph. His voice was steady. "I am writing this because my daughters may argue after I am gone, and I do not want silence to be mistaken for confusion." Dana shifted in her chair. Mr. Hale continued, "I know Claire has received treatment for anxiety. I also know she sought that treatment herself, followed her doctor's advice, returned to work, and continued caring for her mother and for me. Fear is not the same thing as incapacity. Asking for help is not instability." I closed my eyes. For months I had prepared myself for Dad to explain the house, the money, and the will. I had not prepared for him to defend the most private, frightened version of me. The letter continued. Dad wrote that Dana had asked him repeatedly to sell the house or add her name to his accounts. He wrote that he had refused because he did not want his home used to solve business debts he had not created. He listed the major payments he had given her and stated that he considered those amounts when dividing his estate. Then came the sentence that changed the emotional meaning of the case. "I did not leave Claire the house because she is weak. I left it to her because she kept this house and my life functioning for 7 years, and because Dana had already received much of what I would otherwise have left her." Dana began to cry, quietly at first. Mr. Hale read the final paragraph. "I love both my daughters. Love does not require me to pretend they made the same choices. If Dana contests this decision, ask her one question. Did she believe the money was mine when she needed it, but hers when I decided how to count it?" The courtroom remained silent. That was the morally precise question my father had left behind. Dana did not answer it that day. Her lawyer argued that the letter showed Dad had been influenced by resentment, and that I had likely reinforced his concerns. Rebecca responded that the letter's details matched independent bank records, attorney notes, the property listing draft, and Dr. Levin's evaluation. The judge did not issue an immediate ruling. She took the matter under advisement. That meant we left the courthouse with no victory, no dramatic declaration, and no certainty. In the hallway, Dana walked toward me. Her face was blotched from crying. "You made him think I was using him." I felt Rebecca step closer, but I raised my hand slightly. "No, Dana. You talked about me every time you were alone with him." "I defended you." She stared at me. "What?" "I told him your commissions were delayed. I told him your business would recover. I told him you would repay him. You expect me to thank you. No. I expect you to understand that I spent years protecting you from the truth, and you used the worst night of my life to call me unstable in public." Her expression hardened. "You got the house. This is not about the house anymore. It is easy to say that when you are getting it." That was the closest Dana came to answering Dad's question. To her, the result determined the morality. If I received the house, then anything she did to stop me could be described as fairness. 2 weeks later, Judge Ramirez issued her decision. She upheld the will. Her written ruling found that Dad had testamentary capacity when he signed it, and that Dana had not proven undue influence. The court gave significant weight to Dr. Levin's independent evaluation. Mr. Hale's procedures, Dad's financial records, and the consistency between his sealed statement and the outside evidence. The judge specifically rejected the argument that my history of anxiety made me incapable of serving as executor. She wrote that seeking treatment, taking medical leave, and expressing distress during a personal crisis did not establish impaired judgment or coercive behavior. I read that paragraph 3 times. The court appointed me executor, subject to ordinary reporting requirements. Dana's request for a neutral administrator was denied. The judge did not punish Dana for challenging the will. She had the legal right to bring the petition, even though she lost. Each side initially bore its own legal fees, though the estate later recovered a smaller portion of the additional administrative costs caused by Dana's unsuccessful demand to prepare the house for sale. There were no police officers waiting outside. No one went to prison. The justice was quieter. Dad's decision remained intact. The house was mine. Dana received the investment account, which had grown slightly since the will was signed. After taxes, expenses, and the amounts remaining in Dad's other accounts, she still inherited a substantial sum. It was not what she wanted, it was what Dad chose. The legal case ended, but the family consequences continued. My aunt called and apologized for assuming Dad had been confused. Cousin Marlene admitted Dana had told people the court had already found me unfit before the hearing even began. 2 relatives never apologized. They simply started liking my social media posts again, as though silence could erase what they had believed about me. I did not confront them. I also did not pretend nothing had happened. That was new for me. Dana appealed briefly, then withdrew after her new attorney explained the cost and the weakness of her case. She used part of her inheritance to settle her business debt and sold the rental property Dad had helped finance. 6 months after the ruling, she sent me a letter, not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter. She said grief had made her desperate. She said she had believed Dad's will proved I had turned him against her. She apologized for revealing my panic attack, but added that she had been genuinely concerned. That phrase prevented the apology from becoming accountability. Concern does not require exaggeration. Concern does not require a public label. Concern does not take a message sent in trust and turn it into evidence of a person's character. I replied with 3 sentences. I accept that you were grieving. I do not accept what you did with information I gave you in confidence. I am not ready to have a relationship without a fuller acknowledgement of that choice. Dana did not respond for nearly a year. During that year, I repaired the house. Not dramatically, I replaced the leaning fence. I repainted the kitchen a warm white and kept 1 row of pale green tiles above the sink because Dad used to say they were ugly enough to become valuable someday. I turned his basement work area into a small woodworking space for my son, but I left Dad's metal toolbox exactly where it had always been. I also continued therapy. Not because Dana had been right about me, but because being publicly misrepresented by someone I trusted reopened wounds I had believed were finished. My therapist asked why the accusation had hurt more than the lawsuit. I knew the answer. The lawsuit challenged what Dad gave me, I said. The accusation challenged who I am. For years, I had secretly feared that needing help during one terrible season had permanently disqualified me from being viewed as capable. Dana did not create that fear. She found it. Then she used it. Healing meant refusing to keep carrying the weapon after she had put it down. A year and 3 months after the hearing, Dana asked to meet at a coffee shop. She looked older. So did I. There was no lawyer, no family audience, and no polished jacket. She wore jeans and kept both hands around a paper cup. I listened to the recording of my testimony, she said. I had not known she obtained it. I sounded like I was protecting Dad. You sounded like you were protecting your version of yourself. She nodded. I thought if he chose you, it meant he loved you more. I did not rush to comfort her. He counted the money because you kept asking for it. I know. Do you? She looked down. I believed he would always help me. When I saw the will, it felt like he had changed the rules after I had already built my life around them. That was the first honest explanation she had given me. It did not excuse her, but it named the deeper motive. Dana had not merely wanted more money. She had wanted the family structure to remain unchanged. Dad rescuing her, me absorbing the practical burden, and everyone treating her dependence as charm while treating my competence as proof that I needed less. The will disrupted that structure. She had called me unstable because she needed to make Dad's different treatment of us look irrational. I am sorry I used your message, she said. You trusted me that night. I knew exactly what it meant, and I let the court believe something else. That was the apology I had needed. I did not hug her. I did not tell her everything was forgiven. I said, "Thank you for saying it clearly." We began with occasional coffee, no keys to my house, shared finances, no automatic access simply because we were sisters. When family holidays came, I hosted only when I wanted to. If Dana attended, we spoke respectfully. When tensions appeared, I did not smooth it over for everyone else. Our relationship became smaller. It also became more honest. Some people believe reconciliation is proven by returning to the way things were. I believe the way things were is often what made the betrayal possible. Dad's sealed letter remains in the estate file, but Mr. Hale gave me a certified copy after the case closed. For months, I kept it in a locked drawer. Then one Sunday morning, I took it out and read it at the kitchen table. I no longer focused on the money or the house. I focused on the sentence about fear. Fear is not the same thing as incapacity. Asking for help is not instability. My father had seen me more clearly than I understood while he was alive. That realization brought comfort, but it also brought regret. I wished we had spoken openly before his death. I wished I had asked why he was writing the letter. I wished I had stopped protecting Dana long enough to let the three of us face the truth together. But regret cannot become another form of silence. So I framed one small portion of the letter, not the accusation against Dana, and not the explanation of the inheritance. Just Dad's final handwritten line beneath his signature. Being responsible does not mean accepting everything. The frame sits beside the old coffee mug in my kitchen. On Saturday mornings, sunlight comes through the window. Dad once refused to replace because he said the draft built character. I make coffee, unlock the back door, and listen to the quiet house settle around me. Dana has a key to neither the door nor my private life. That is not revenge. It is the boundary our family should have learned years earlier. What would you have done after Dana finally apologized? Slowly rebuild the relationship, or keep the door permanently closed? Share your opinion, like the video, and subscribe for more reality-inspired family stories. This story was created for dramatic storytelling, entertainment, and reflection.